Hey, everybody, welcome back to Pro AV Today. I am your host, Ben Thomas. You know, as an industry, as we have conversations about sustainability, compatibility, accessibility, creating long-term value for our dealer partners, integrator partners, things like that, uh, we have had an increased conversation about software-based tools. And a lot of that is because we're shifting into more, digital natives where people are more comfortable with software tools. But in a lot of ways, we kind of have almost jumped in before we had the opportunity really to put our floaties on. And I think as a community too, especially as you start to leverage a lot of these tools, it's important to ask a lot of questions, not only from end users and people who are users of the product, but from people who have done it before. So I wanted to bring on someone today who has been a part of an organization who is actively doing that and has been doing that for a while. And that's Tim Bigoness over at D Tools. Tim, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks, Ben, for having me.
Tim, D Tools, you guys were kind of on the forefront of more specifically like the integrator software side, right? Project management, which actually is where a lot of software was introduced, right? You look at CRM tools and, email marketing in some cases, right? A lot of those tools started initially more on the B2B and customer support side. And now, look, we're looking at hardware-based support software tools, things like that. But, to kind of set the table for us, Tim, how kind of have you seen really the software-based tools permeate the industry, really in the last 5 to 10 years specifically?
Well, I'd say, software exists really at its core to help solve problems and improve, productivity, right? That's really what the core of software is for. And coming from, the software industry, not the not the AV industry, I've been involved in tools that have always helped creative professionals do their job better, smarter, and increase their productivity. So Adobe, I worked at 3 companies where all 3 of the companies that I worked for, Macromedia, Equilibrium, Scene7, they were all acquired by Adobe. And what Adobe has are tools for creative professionals. Well, at D Tools, we have software tools that help AV integrators run better businesses from the sales side, from system design, project management, and service management. All right, and that's what really the core of our software does. And what we're kind of seeing in the AV world is this convergence between IT and AV, which means the hardware is being driven, not analog, it's digital, it's being driven by software. So you've got 2 kind of primary swim lanes for software. You've got the basic business productivity tools that help the people in the AV industry run better businesses, be more productive. And then you also have software that's kind of driving the experience for the end user. So it's really, there's been a lot of shifts, and really from the business side, helping integrators move away from their spreadsheet that, they use to either, drive their quotes or their bill of materials, or take their, basic drawings that may have been in Visio or AutoCAD, disparate and not connected to anything else in the project. Our software kind of helps bridge that gap, bring them together, and ties the engineered drawings to the bill of materials, and all the information is driven from a kind of a main project file rather than an Excel spreadsheet. That helps improve productivity. I can speak much more to that than I can to software being used to drive the experience, but we can talk about that as well because I have some thought.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? You talk about really the common denominator being function, right? We want to have function that supports or creates value, right? Whether it's more on the project management side, whether it's on the business services and tools side, or really extrapolated all the way to the end, right? Companion software for hardware tools, right? And I'm not going to get in trouble for saying this, but I will kind of make a joke to where, every new set of headphones that I get these days, I have to download an app to figure it out and tweak, make some of the adjustments and things like that. And I think that so many times, and this is kind of my next question is, we've tried to force function, right? We've tried to force people into saying, hey, instead of making things ergonomically easy to use, we're going to push you towards the software tool, right? And you talk about the same challenge happening with, the integrator side or the project management side, right? Instead of, somebody saying, hey, I'm going to use my Excel spreadsheet, the burden has now been put on the software companies and Indeed tools, for example, to actually convince them why that's better, right? And I think holistically, that part of the AV world has done a much better job than the companion software piece, where sometimes product design can solve a lot of the challenges. Talk about how some of the ways, you guys have empowered the function of the software to actually improve the experience and it not just be kind of some add-on.
Well, I mean, I think it comes down to, you have to understand from our perspective, right? No one's just going to change from what they're doing if the change doesn't actually improve the results. Now, a lot of times it comes down to what problems are you trying to solve? When we talk with integrators and when we talk with our customers, first thing and foremost is we need to find out what pain they're having. And by understanding what that pain point is, we can identify if we can help them and how we can help them. But it's not without change. So you talk about your, experience with the headphones, right? Well, before, it was kind of plug and play. I got headphones. I'm going to plug them in and I can control the volume. Maybe that's it. Maybe that sounds great. Maybe just the headphones themselves sound great. But, software tools can really help fine tune the sound. Maybe you have hearing that you're partial to, more highs or more lows, or you want to maybe do a better mix. Well, you couldn't do that before with just plug and play. So did it cause you to change your experience with the headphones? Yeah, probably a bit. Did you have to learn a new way of listening? Yeah, you did. But ultimately, it probably is better. Maybe it was a step you didn't want to take, but I bet at the end of the day, you plug in your headphones, you do a little bit of adjusting with the software they provide, and then ultimately your experience is going to be that much better. And the key here is it was change. You didn't want to do it, or you didn't feel a need to do it. Well, what was wrong with just plugging in? Well, there's probably nothing wrong with it, but it could be better. And a lot of these guys that we see on the same side, well, look, man, I've had my spreadsheet for 25 years and I've run my business this way. Well, that's great. But so we ask questions, right? Do you know how much margin you're making per project? Do you know how much profit you're making per project? Do you understand what your labor rates are compared to, the difficulty of the project? Are you fine tuning the things that are going to help you make more money for your business doing the same work? And so we have to kind of dig in, and change just to change. Sure. I mean, nobody really likes change, right? But if we can show that by, implementing this solution, you're going to be able to sell more, you're going to be more efficient, your team's going to be happier because they know what they're going to be doing, they can be more efficient, everything improves. And what if you could improve your profitability 10% or so per project? What does that mean to the bottom line? What if you could generate a quote 2 or 3 times faster than you were responding before? Does that mean you could get more business faster? Can you be more competitive? So it really, software enables productivity, and it is always evolving and always changing, right? I think it's incumbent on companies to talk to their customers, to understand the problems that they're trying to solve. And then it's always iterative. And what comes out today, maybe that version 1.0 of the software that you have for your headphones, okay, maybe it wasn't great, but guess what? They're going to go, they're going to talk to their customers, they're going to find out what worked, they're going to find out what didn't, and then I guarantee you version 2.0 will probably be a little better, 3.0 will be better, and so on and so forth, right? And it's not just the headphones. Think about the content that you can now deliver as a content provider. thanks to software tools? How much better can the experience be if you're a digital signage company and you've got these great tools now to help deliver experiences for your end user? And then as an integrator, when you're installing systems, now you've got cloud-based software that helps you remotely access and monitor those systems to keep those systems functioning at a very high level. All of these things are possible because of software. Whereas before, how would you service a customer? There's break fix. They call you, you roll a truck, you go out there, you troubleshoot the problem. It worked, but how much more efficient, can the process be? So that's really where some of the areas that, as a whole, and the industry, that convergence that I mentioned between IT and AV is only going to continue. And AV integrators are going to have a different skill set that is needed to move forward than maybe they did 10 years ago.
Well, Tim, look, this is why I love having you on the show, right? Because you pushed back, obviously, which is a great thing to have, but you also bring incredible insight. So we're talking about the headphones example, right? At the end of the day, do I know that it probably is going to increase, or it's going to be inconvenient to get everything set up right? Yes. But you're right? When you can actually teach and show that value and actually provide value beyond maybe some of the traditional expectations, that's where you start to win. And I want to kind of follow up with this too. We throw around the term digital native a lot in the industry where, certain people are aging into the industry and have expectations. You talk about Adobe. That's a great example, right? Where you look at a tool like Photoshop, and it's completely revolutionized the way that people are doing business. And then now you look at a tool like Canva, who has completely revolutionized how people are continuing to edit photos and things like that. So there's always this adoption and this innovation that has to happen. But I want to talk specifically about people that are aging into the industry, right? They're expecting a lot more of these software-based, more user-friendly tools. What are some of the ways as an industry, even on the integration side, obviously, that we can kind of create and evolve to help better serve some of those end users?
Well, so as we think about it as a consumer, let's just look at it from the end consumer. The consumer is very comfortable using software now. Whereas before the iPhone or before the iPad or before, the rise of personal, whatever your preference is, software was limited to a computer. And now every device, your phone is a computer, but you're used to downloading an app, looking at that functionality, interacting with that app. Everything is, easier and more app-based. So the customer expects it, right? So tools are getting easier. You look at the difference between Photoshop and Canva. That's a big difference, right? Photoshop, yes, very powerful. Needs some training. It's a professional tool. Well, Canva, professional tool, much easier to get into, much easier learning curve. And part of that is the evolution of the software itself, the evolution of the expectation of the end user. The end user expects things to be easier now. So how does an integrator, then really take advantage of providing solutions for that expectation? They need to make sure that, before, what were they doing for control systems? They were programming these intensive UIs and lots of custom. And now, that there's a lot of devices that can be controlled from a native app or from a very simple user experience on the phone, on the iPad, not dedicated keypads, and companies are adapting to it. It's all the one thing that's just constant is that change continues, and it continues more rapidly now, it seems, than it ever has. What maybe would have been a 2 or 3 year cycle, maybe it's cut back to a year, right? In terms of change, adaptation, where we are as an industry, what's happening. So I don't know if I'm answering your question about what we
You
do
are. I'm telling you, you
in
are.
the industry, but the thing that without some basic knowledge and comfort level of utilizing software tools, um, I don't see how anyone's going to be successful, right? In whatever industry you're in, it is what we do. Children, they instinctively, man, they give them an iPad when they're really, really young. They know what to it's instinctive. They're growing up with the technology, whereas maybe my generation or people a bit older than I, you had to learn all of it. Now I've been in technology for 35 years, so I would like to think that even at my advanced age, I can learn and adapt to new technology rather quickly. But people that are entering the workforce now, people that are entering the industry now, that's second nature. They've got the chops, they've got the tools. It's not as much of a curve. So it's us older dogs that need to learn the new tricks. I'm not worried about the next generation coming into this industry because it's second nature.
What's interesting about that too, and I want to kind of take that point that you made to the next level, right? Where you talk about not worrying about people kind of aging into the workforce, not knowing how to do things. What I don't think our industry has talked enough about quite yet. We do talk a lot about companion hardware and obviously companion software and standalone software as great tools. But you look at a tool like Salesforce, right? Who now has literally built an entire industry around operating its platform, right? There are entire job descriptions written to help support Salesforce at specific organizations, companies, things like that. That it really is the next step of where we're going as an AV community, right? Whether it's hiring someone to whereas you might have been an AV technician who was resoldering cable or re-terminating cables, resoldering things all the time. Now that primary job function exists a lot more in the digital world, right? Same thing with D-Tools, right? There might be an integrator partner that you guys work with that their sole responsibility is management of that platform. Talk about some of those hard skills that people need as they're getting into the workforce, but talk about the opportunity that we have from a software perspective to actually revolutionize the roles inside of the industry.
Well, I think the business is changing, right? And so every organization has internal operational processes. And they're driven by software, whether it's the accounting software, whether it's the back office software, ERP systems, depending on the size of the company. But there's software helping run that business. And AV is no different, right? AV integrators or AV providers, AV service providers, they're operational, right? They have customers. They need to sell. They need to then deliver on the work that they're being contracted for. Then they need to service that work they're contracted for. They need to invoice. They need to manage inventory. They need to run their business. And so there are roles that may be repurposed within an organization because now all of a sudden service may involve much more than just going out and repairing something. It may be keeping OSs up to date, maybe updating firmware, maybe doing system checks and system wellness to make sure that systems are operating, optimally. And guess what? Because software evolves, look at, Tesla, what they put out operating system upgrades to performance for the car, right? So you could have a system that's controlled today and a firmware upgrade happens and you could have all new, functionality that maybe didn't exist before. And, those are areas where, 5-10 years ago, you wouldn't think of anything like that. And you do have Salesforce admins. And in our case, we do have some customers where part of their job is to make sure that the D-Tools catalog is up to date, pricing's managed, or working with the other stakeholders within the organization on custom reports or new reports or functionality for the software. And admin, that's system admins, data managers. Those are all 21st century jobs, right? So the skills, you know, kids coming out of school now are going to have a lot more of those software or soft skills than maybe 10 years.
Well, Tim, we'll wrap with this. I want to give you a chance really to speak kind of directly to really that newer development community happening in AV, right? You talked about it. Tesla has adopted it, right? Where they build a lot of the functionality and features into the car off the line, right? And it's as simple as a software update or a firmware update that will turn on something like autopilot. That is really one of the next things that's happening. Is already really happening across AV is what I'll call tech-enabled or software-enabled hardware. Talk about really that idea and how we can better support that community, and then really some of the big takeaways that you have, obviously, as somebody who's been a part of a lot of these organizations over time. Talk about some of the ways that we can help best serve the end users through a lot of that technology.
Well, that's a interesting question, but think about, there's always going to be innovation. We don't know what the next feature set of a particular, device may be, right? Better calibration, remote calibration, better performance, better, spatial audio that could be programmed into a receiver. And that's not my area of expertise. There's a lot of creative and really, really smart people in this industry that are thinking about that all the time. What we're thinking about from our perspective as a provider of productivity software to the industry is talking to our customers and finding out how we can better serve them. And I guarantee you that every manufacturer and every provider in this space is doing the same thing. How can our speakers be better? How can our receivers be better? How can our video displays be better? What other things do we need to include? How can we make them easier for the end user to use? How can we make them more accessible, right? So we talk to our customers and try and really understand where we can improve. Could it be the user experience? Could it be the accessibility of features? Could it be access to more manufacturers and suppliers in our product library? Could it be easier pricing updates? Whatever it is, you always need to remain in touch and communication with your customers and find out what we can do better. I mean, one of the great things I love about our company, and I've been here now for 18 years, is that we always want to be better. And every company should feel that way. It doesn't mean you're not good. It doesn't mean you're not doing a good job, but we can always be better. And even, as a person, I want to be a better person today than I was yesterday. Doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It just means I want to be better. There's things I can improve. You think about I always like to look at, examples, and I'm a Warriors fan, right? So I'm going to look at Steph. Sorry, I'm going to bring up, right? 35 years old, not showing any signs of slowing down. In fact, he continues to improve. And you look at all the great athletes, they're always coming back next season with something better, and it's that dedication and work ethic that strives, even the best to want to be better. I think, we're at this very interesting point in the industry where we have a lot of opportunity to go places we haven't. And as things get more complex, they also get a bit easier to deal with. It's just not so much on the connectivity side. It's really the understanding of the technology. And there's always an opportunity to improve. And I'm speaking from our perspective. We're always looking for how we can improve, what new capabilities we can provide, and how to improve the capabilities we already have.
Well, Tim, look, this is, I'm not a software developer, and this has been really helpful and insightful for me, right?
Neither am
Especially
I.
as we have conversations all the time
about
really what's next, right? And software being one of those gigantic question marks. How much is the industry going to leverage it? And I appreciate you being the sage on this topic, even though there's not always a one-to-one correlation of, oh, hey, I've done this before, so it's going to work here. But I appreciate really your willingness to be open and transparent and kind of give some advice, especially as those of us in the industry who may be trying to implement software in new places are trying to do so.
Well, I appreciate you being here and enjoyed our conversation.
Awesome. Tim Bigoness from D Tools. Tim, thanks so much for coming on, and thank you guys for joining us today.
Thanks a lot.